This is Wretched Radio with Todd Friel.
So, how long exactly is a generation anyway? This is Wretched Radio. A sociologist studying 86 cultures for decades came up with definitive conclusions, the connection between the quality of living, how healthy a culture is, with external markers like architecture, art, agriculture, transportation, furniture design, clothing design, music, all of the good things that cultures are typically graded by. They rise or fall based on sexual attitudes. How does a culture view issues of marriage? Now, this particular sociologist named Unwin, who died in the mid-30s, 1930s, he couldn't figure out why. Sexual freedom directly leads to a decline and the collapse of cultures, because he was using sexuality as the marker, and it is not. The marker is belief. Sexual values flow out of belief. We cannot make the sociologist's error here and go, so if a culture collapses because they have complete sexual liberty and freedom, then we got to change sexuality. We got to get their attitudes and their standards higher about sex so that they won't be frisky before marriage and then they'll stay married faithfully. That's what we've got to do. The Christian realizes that sexual values flow out of belief first. And if people believe in nothing, that man is the highest form of being in the universe, in other words, we are God functionally, we're going to live for ourselves, and we're going to make decisions that please us the most. Therefore, we're not going to follow Mr. Unwin and his conclusions. We are going to see the need for changing people's faith. Then their sexual values change, then their sexual behavior changes, and then the culture changes. Let's not put the cart before the horse. He concluded, when a culture behaves chastely, whatever the motivation is, we know that it's in alignment with God's values and thinking. It flourishes, period. Prenuptially and postnuptially. Behave in a biblical way, and a culture will do great. You don't? It won't. Simple. And he said that the culture that fails to live in that way, the culture that has complete sexual freedom as its driving force, 3 generations, it's a goner. It becomes an inert society. It becomes dead. Culturally, dead, human flourishing. Now, we know there's spiritual death, which is the bigger and the biggest issue. But we're looking at our own culture and we're going, yikes, we seem to be pressing toward that sexual freedom business. In fact, you could argue sexual freedom, was that not the bumper sticker of the 1960s, certainly the 70s? And that we now are living in a world that is pushing for complete sexual freedom. Right now. We're in it. We're at the beginning of this at the very least. And he says, based on a sociological study of 86 countries, this will always happen within 3 generations, collapse. So you've been wondering, when is it going to collapse on us? Answer, according to this sociologist, 3 generations. It happens every time. How long is a generation? According to this sociologist, he said 33 years. That's how he did the math on this. 33 years. That would mean 3 times 3. Where's my phone?
99.
Let's call it a century for the sake of easy math. When did complete sexual freedom begin in this country? Well, I think the push began certainly in the 60s. But aren't we seeing it now? We didn't see the same levels of degradation in the 60s that we're seeing today. This is just polygamy, same-sex sex. This is with children. This is bestiality. You got that, and that's what is being pushed right now. You got 99 years, and you're a goner. Prior to the sexual revolution, which began in the late 1960s, by the way, just to do a shout-out on this, to give the fellow credit who did the summarizing, kirkdurston.com. Nice work, sir. Prior to the sexual revolution, which began in the late 60s, prenuptial chastity was still held strong by Western culture, starting in the 70s. A premarital sexual freedom became increasingly acceptable. By the early 2000s, the majority of teens sexually active. Remaining a virgin until marriage? Ridiculed. At the same time, our culture moved from a social norm of absolute monogamy to modified monogamy. Remember that category? So we downgraded. The first generation of a society, setting aside its sexual restraints, can still enjoy its newfound sexual freedom before any significant decline in culture. You've been wondering, well, when is culture going to slip? Well, this sociologist, he observed this is the way. No. You'll keep doing well because it's the vestiges of. It's not like you turn a page and society falls apart. The page, it's turned, and then the society increasingly will fall apart as it becomes increasingly inert because all we're concerned about is sexual pleasure. That's it. It's all we care about. I don't care how well I live. I don't care how many square feet. I don't care about quality of living. I don't care about transportation. I just want me some. And I don't, in my format, as often as I want to, delivered in any mechanism. That's all I care about. That's an inert culture. And that comes 3 generations after sexual freedom, prenuptially and postnuptially. The data shows this having your cake and eating it too phase lasts a maximum of 1 generation before the decline sets in. Here's what the sociologist wrote. Sometimes a man has been heard to declare that he wishes both to enjoy the advantages of high culture and to abolish compulsory continence. The inherent nature of the human organism, however, seems to be such that these desires are incompatible, even contradictory. So you're not going to have a high culture with low sexual values. You're not going to have it. And this isn't sociology. This is biblical. This is human flourishing. When God defines the rules and you apply them, even if you don't believe in them, your culture is going to flourish. You don't, you won't, period. The reformer may be likened to the foolish boy who desires both to keep his cake and to consume it. Any human society is free to choose either to display great energy or to enjoy sexual freedom. The evidence is that it cannot do both for more than 1 generation. So if the having your cake and eating it too phase lasts into the early 2000s, we should now begin to observe the verification or falsification of this sociologist's predictions. We're there. You and I are watching it. Now, we're going to be deceived if we respond the way that evangelicals so often have. Hey, stop behaving sexually. Change your beliefs about sexual stuff. Change your beliefs about God. That's the Christian response to this. Sociologist Unwin found that when strict prenuptial chastity was abandoned, absolute monogamy, deism, and rational thinking disappeared within 3 generations. How are we doing as we enter the 2nd generation since our own sexual revolution at the end of the 20th century? Number 1, as predicted by the sociologist, absolute monogamy has already been replaced with modified monogamy. Common law stuff. It's not till death do us part. It's as long as it makes me happy. Number 2, deism is rapidly declining exactly as predicted. Prior to the 60s, we could say more of a belief in God, certainly, especially with what generation are we seeing the collapse of belief in God? With the millennial generation and Gen Z and X. Of course, they're raised in this sexual liberty culture. Their belief in God goes down. Now, you and I know they've got the cart before the horse here. There's also been a huge increase in the percentage of the population that classifies itself as non-religious. So this is headed toward the zoistic level of the category. Non-religious, low view of sex, low view of marriage. Now, I know and you know because the Bible tells us the problem is beliefs. You change beliefs, everything else gets fixed. But he puts them in the wrong order. Nevertheless, the observation is clear. We're not seeing sex change belief. We're seeing belief changing sexual values. Number 3, the swiftness with which rational thinking declined after the 70s is astounding. 2 words, post-modernism. We're thinking like complete noodles. What was that? The ACLU stating that a man who believes he's a woman can deliver a baby or some, what was that ridiculous story? It's rational thinking. And what's really just so astounding about it is they think that their irrational thinking is actually rational. See how clever we are and how dumb you are and out of step with the times and on the wrong side of history? That comes from a lack of belief in God, not just because of sexual liberty. These are all fruits of a lack of belief in God. Summary of our culture. Unwin's main predictions, the abandonment of rationalism, deism, monogamy, are all well underway, which makes the ultimate prediction appear to be credible, the collapse of Western civilization in the third generation. I disagree with the sociologist. It's been a collapse of faith, which has led to these other collapses. Will we be the exception? Absolutely not. He describes the attitude as a pardonable egocentricity and a quaint and comfortable doctrine that flies in the face of data which indicate that the pattern of decline happens with monotonous regularity. Certainly explains what we see, doesn't it? And now the question is, how do we respond? Do we try to encourage the culture for the sake of art and architecture and music and human flourishing to change its sexual values? Nope. We encourage them to believe on the Lord Jesus Christ, and you will be saved. The rest will take care of itself. Let's not follow the message of the sociologist, but the message of our captain. And until tomorrow, go serve your king.
What the world would be like without Wretched. Nobody wants this. Please become a Wretched Gospel partner.